Religious leaders are sometimes concerned that interfaith dialogue will lead participants to question or reject their own faith traditions. ICNY's Dr. Henry Goldschmidt raised this concern with Tom Dobbins of Catholic Charities and Dr. Mehnaz Afridi of Manhattan College at a program for students at Regis High School. He asked these Catholic and Muslim interfaith activists if their relationships with members of other religious communities had undermined or deepened their personal faith.
Should I take this one first? Sure. I think from my perspective, Henry, thank you for asking that question, it did deepen my faith. And I think it was through some of the interfaith work that we did with the local Muslim communities, particularly in Staten Island and in Manhattan, because what we were able to do at those times was before we undertook doing things like I said, the acts of compassion, feeding the hungry, and other acts such as that, we had these planning meetings, and we went to the local mosque. And I have to be honest with you, as I said, I in my personal experience, have friends who are Muslims, but I have to say, I've never been to a mosque before. I mean, this is true. And I'm not as young as you guys are. I mean, I'm decades beyond you. So it was really a very fascinating thing growing up here and having never been in a mosque before. And it was, I think, through the example of going into the mosque and looking at the devotion of the people. We were there, thankfully, at the time when the call to prayer, where the azan was set aloud. And at that time, all of our Muslim partners stopped, and they invited us. They said they were welcome to stay, but they immediately went into prayer. And I have to say, the devotion that I witnessed when the prayer was taking place, to me was beautiful. It bespoke my experience of sometimes walking along the street and sometimes seeing people, and they could be selling hot dogs or they could be selling pretzels, or they could, maybe be driving with a cab. But then sometimes you'll see they pull along the side of the road, they put their prayer rug down, and then facing Mecca, they do their prayer. They do that 5 times a day. And to me, it brought home some of the devotion that I saw began to really make me question the devotion I had to my faith. I mean, it began to say, how devoted am I to my Catholicism? How devoted am I to be able 5 times a day to stop whatever I'm doing? And how devoted are we as Catholics to stop, to remember that God is present with us, to remember that God is part of the conversation? And what kind of world would we have if we all were attentive to our religious faith in some degree? And we stopped board meetings, or we stopped United Nations meetings, and we were attentive to what God is calling us to. So I certainly think, Henry, it kind of grew me deeper, and I think it's through that devotion that I experienced that deep reflection might have come.
I've already said a little bit about Judaism, but I want to say something about 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I wasn't living in New York. I moved here from Los Angeles 3 years ago. And I was really, really very angry. And I was angry at my faith. And I was angry at Muslims. And I was angry and angry and angry. And I couldn't believe that Muslims had done this terrible act. And it was through my interfaith work that I was able to come back to saying, okay, this is not what Islam is about. So it's been a very hard time for Muslims all around the world, especially in the United States. But when I saw other Muslims and Christians and Jews and even Buddhists and Hindus and secularists reaching out to Muslims and saying, this is terrible, but we're not going to let this destroy the Muslim community in America. It was a very, very troubling time for me, spiritually, emotionally, physically, because there were lots of incidences of racism towards me. But that was really where I felt the interfaith engagement, cooperation, the support that I got post 9/11 from faith communities brought me closer to my own faith and my spirituality.